We're going to enter a different format and see how that feels for us as we explore the deepest reaches of the science of mind. One of the things I looked at was what is relevant about what it is we teach in our day-to-day lives. So I explored the top news stories of the day. And these are actual headlines. In a grim game of numbers, Israel and Palestinians vie for advantage. Ukraine says 2 fighter jets are shot down as clashes intensify. Solemn ceremony for the Malaysian plane that was shot down victims. New questions on the health law as rulings on subsidies differ. And lastly, what the Hobby Lobby ruling means for America. These are real issues that affect real people, millions of real people. And what we want to know is how does science of mind apply to this? And so what we're going to do here is actually look at the different topics and look at how principle actually works in the face of, for instance, what is going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. People are dying there. Missiles are going off. One missile landed yesterday a mile from Ben Gurion Airport, which had all air traffic shut down. In doing so, it almost shuts down the Israeli economy completely. And so the effect is not only on lives, it is on the economy of a country. And so we look at this and we can feel that they feel their victimness in this. And it's real. Going in there and saying, you're not a victim, will not be comforting. Remember, today's topic is comfort in the discomfort. So as we look at these, when we look at how to apply science of mind, we don't want to take the stance of how did you create this? Or what could you do differently? But more, where is the comfort in the discomfort when we look at people suffering? And so one of the things that occurs to me when I think about the Israeli and Palestinian conflict and those that died in the Ukraine is what a comfort it is to know that there is a larger power than ourselves, and yet that is ourselves. That we are ultimately everlasting. We are ultimately divine. We are ultimately immortal. That when our bodies die, we do not die with it. That is a very comforting thought that atheists don't get to have. Anyone who is afraid of dying does not understand the depth of the immortality in which we truly are and finds no comfort in that. But that is what we offer in the science of mind, the comfort. But beyond that, look at the conflict that goes on as Russia's armies stand at the borders of Ukraine ready to take over that country. As Ukrainians fight Ukrainians for who's in charge. As Palestinians and Israelis fight to simply exist. Where is the science of mind in that? That we can hold for them so that we're not just looking at this conflict thinking we're helpless. There's nothing we can do. Where is the science of mind in that we can hold? Would anybody like to add any input to this? Julie.
These are wonderful questions, Cliff, and I know when teaching classes and talking about science of mind to people, this is always the issues that come up is how can such awful and bad things in the world happen? If there is a God, why do these things occur? And I really love looking at this evening, and the first thing that came to my mind as a science of mind teaching when you were talking about this is that despite appearances, that God can only be for us. And so in the midst of what is happening, there is a deeper truth that's going on, and it's just moving our mind beyond what is appearing into a deeper revelation of being. And that's not easy to do when we are seeing situations like this. So I appreciate this topic tonight.
What you bring out is a very important point, Julie. The idea, I've heard science of mind teachers and ministers speak of turning away from the condition and turning towards what we want. And I don't actually believe that's best, because being in denial of what is not great and doesn't actually serve the highest good of those who don't understand our turning away. But when we can see and be with and have compassion for what is there and then go beyond it to the bigger truth, we have encompassed the reality, not denied it, and held it in a bigger, higher way. And so not turned away from it, just held it to a deeper truth that we know. And I think that is way more powerful, compassionate, and kind towards those who go through such devastating experience. So thank you for bringing up the idea of going beyond, because I think that makes so much more sense than turning away. Anybody else? Who else would like to weigh in on this? Anybody? Okay, let's go and look at the next one. New questions on health law as rulings on subsidies differ. Now, I'm one of the millions who have signed up under Obamacare who gets a subsidy to support my premiums. And so this could look like a ruling that could affect me if I let it. But the thing we need to hold around something like this is that life is abundant. It's up to us to be willing to view it that way. Life is rich. We in Science of Mind know that it's not up to us to treat for a outcome, for instance, an outcome like the health law stays intact with the subsidies intact. That's not how we treat here. What we treat is however this falls out, it is to our highest and best good. However this falls out, we have to be able to rest in the calm assurance that our lives work anyway. Now that's really hard when you've got a job that's paying $12 an hour and you're trying to support your family. I understand that this isn't an easy thing to do, but Science of Mind was never meant as an easy thing to do. When we look at questions like this, questions that affect millions, the thing about this particular question of the rulings differing is it leaves it in limbo. We don't know how it's going to turn out yet. And yet, isn't that true for so much of our lives? We don't know how it's going to turn out. And so by understanding that there is a divine, a larger force, a larger power that is within us and is us, that we get to direct by how much faith we are willing to hold. We can hold that question in knowing however it falls, it is for the highest and best good. We don't have to know how it turns out. We don't even have to direct how it turns out. We simply need to know it's for the highest and best. Who else would like to weigh in on this? Julie.
Thanks, Cliff. I love that. I really, when I go into prayer, especially anything around money or prosperity or abundance, how important it is for me when I'm praying to not tell God how to do it. When to do it, when to get it, how much I want, because the minute I start defining, I'm limiting. And I know that my abundance is not dependent, and I'm also on that subsidy as well. I know that my abundance is not dependent upon a law, a subsidy, even my wage. My prosperity is God-given. And when I stop seeing that money equals prosperity, that's when I can take that bigger leap into there is so much beauty in this world. And to me, that's an amazing prosperity of consciousness, just to be witness to the abundant beauty that nature is. And when I am focusing on the greatness of this abundance, I feel more abundant than what, if I was to look at my bank account, I might say something different. But when I look at this, it doesn't matter what the numbers in my bank account is. So there's my 2 cents.
There you go. Thank you. And that's right. You know, it's again, how deeply we get into our faith. You know, how deeply we get into what is the truth beyond the seeming reality in front of us. You know, when we go back to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that how we hold the conflicts within ourselves affect that conflict. You know, there's a piece in every conflict around the world that has to do with the conflicts within ourselves. And when we are able to find comfort in the discomfort and rest the conflicts within ourselves and find peace, we have added to the peace and given their peace a better chance. If we are taking sides, if we are saying one side is wrong and one side is right, then we have added to the conflict in the world.
Oh my gosh.
It is up to us to stop taking sides and find that place of unity within ourselves so that then we can hold it for those in the Israeli and Palestinian conflict and those in the Ukrainian conflict. When we find that place of unity within ourselves. Ashley, you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think I could just say ditto to what Julie so beautifully said. For me, it's just it's so much around trust. It's like just always trusting in what we know to be true. I think, you know, we can go through our lives and say intellectually about these principles that they're true, but this is, you know, when we're looking around us at what's happening in the world, it actually requires you to go quite a bit deeper than just thinking about the principles and going, yes, this is true. It's like you have to dig in, and what they often bring up for me or reveal for me is right where I'm at with embodying the principles. Like, oh, I'm getting a little triggered around this, or I'm having some anxiety around this, and I don't want to think of these issues as opportunities necessarily, but being on the spiritual path, they certainly seem to be opportunities to deepen into all of it.
Thank you. I think that's true. You know, I think they are opportunities for us because they are reflections for us. Whatever our reaction is to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, people dying and fighting over stuff, it's a reflection. How we feel about that is in some way how we feel about our own conflicts. So it's true that we have to dig in deeper when we look at something outside in the world. But what's also true is what it brings up for us inside. And this is why instead of turning away, you know, I know so many people who don't watch the news because they don't want the negative hit and don't realize that the news is negative to them because they are thinking of it negatively. Now, I understand that it's incredibly hard to think positively about people killing each other. And I'm not actually asking anybody to do that because I don't believe it's positive. What I am asking is that use the opportunity to find peace within ourselves. Use the opportunity to add peace to the world so that the killing may stop. Gandhi had a great statement about this. He said, what we can do, we will do. And he was also speaking to what he can't do, right? We can't go over there and negotiate peace for them. So we may feel helpless, but we're never helpless. There's always something we can do. And it always starts with peace within ourselves. And then may lead to another action. But if it leads to an action of taking sides, we have added to the conflict. If it leads to an action of unifying, we have added to the possibility of peace. Kaz, you want to weigh in?
Good evening. How are you? Yeah, it's really remarkable that you have brought this up because I find myself not conflicted, but because I have friends on both sides, Israeli friends, Jewish friends, and Palestinian friends, and Muslim friends, I am nearly forced to take a side. And they don't understand where I come from spiritually, that's just not, I'm not made like that. You know, that I'm all about believing that peace is possible. And when we approach it from love instead of from fear and from I'm better than you, I'm more deserving than you, I'm more worthy than you, on either side, that things change. But as it, you know, I really feel put in a bad position, and I do my best to release that and live, I don't want to say live by example, but I guess that's it, that I have love for everybody and for both sides, and I try to see what they're wanting to express on both sides, but it doesn't prevent me from speaking up and saying, I intuitively, instinctively, I feel that, you know, hate doesn't stop hate. You know, you've heard it a million times, and killing doesn't stop killing, and violence doesn't stop violence, and, you know, then I'm labeled the bleeding heart, but you know what, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. So yeah, I just find it amazing. I got in here, I had to leave for a little while, and I got in late, but where you are is just, it's been on my mind for the last week, and I'm so grateful that you've brought this up. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. And you brought up a very important point that because I misspoke when I said don't take sides. Actually, again, I defer to Gandhi, who said he was never a pacifist, that he always took sides. He took the side of peace and was actively engaged in that peace all the time. And I think that from a science of mind perspective, it's our job to take the side of, to stand, to not just be pacifist around love, but to actually stand in it, to speak out for it. It is our job to speak out for the fact that of course, there is a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Of course there is. Just because we haven't found it yet, and we may not find it for another 100 years, it doesn't mean that it's not there. It must be there because unity exists. Of course, there is a resolve around the Ukrainian-Russian conflict that actually works, that actually makes sense for everyone. It must exist, whether we can see it or not. And that is our calm assurance, our depth of knowing, and our willingness to speak up for it. When somebody says you have to take sides, it is us that does take sides, that stands in the place of peace, that stands in the place of negotiation, that stands in the place of course there's a solution here. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Yes, Kaz. The thing is, we do see the peace. We do see what it can do and what has done. That's exactly right. And in that way, we make science of mind relevant. We don't allow others to make the conversation about who's right. We make the conversation around there's peace. There's a way to make this work, of course. Let's find it. Let's move that way. Anybody else want to weigh in on this?
I just love what you said, that we do choose the side, and the side is peace. I'm really inspired by that.
Yeah, it's really important to know that we're not pacifists. We're not just standing on the sidelines. We're actually taking action to support our stance.
Yeah, no, that's really beautiful. It's a great anchor to feel solid in it rather than having. I've definitely been on, in that we're all in this together thing and not wanting to, but when you're choosing peace, you're actually choosing everyone in it anyway, but you're taking such a powerful stand.
We are the center of inclusion. We stand in unity. That is what we do. And it is not a pacifist standing on the sidelines thing. And that was beautifully said, Ashley. Kaz is right. You have gorgeously brought that forth. Our last topic of the day, the Hobby Lobby. And what the ruling means for America. So the Supreme Court has ruled that corporations should be treated like individuals and get to choose what religion they get to stand behind irregardless of what their workers or even their minority stockholders may agree with. And so for an economy that's slow, where folks may have trouble finding work, this puts some people in what may seem like a very bad situation. And so what does that mean? What does that mean to a country of workers, of millions of people who are working for corporations that may be in discord with their own beliefs? And how does science of mind apply to this? Anybody want to speak to that before I do?
It's funny, the other two, you know, I was able to, or three, whatever, was able to kind of remain more neutral, and this one, it got me. I just plugged right in. I'm like, oh, wow, I got sucked in. Oh, it's funny about this news and these issues and how interesting and how quick I can just collapse. And that's what happened in the moment where you're talking about this. I just went, boom, I just collapsed into the story. And it's so interesting because that's what it is. It's a story. And we have to remember that we are always at choice, and we can choose something different and something new and something more aligned with who we are. And even in the midst of even working with somebody or working in a company that might not match who we are. And then we have to look, can we still be in our integrity? Can we still stay true to who we are working in something like this, and or not? And it's, to me, it's deepening into what God wants me to do in my life. Where is it that I need to be? And following that, and not necessarily what somebody is laying out for me. And respect, but yet also honoring and respecting. It's a very fine line to respect and honor somebody else and also follow our own truth.
I think that there is a way in which our ideas about looking beyond come in very handy with something like this.
Mm-hmm.
The larger truth is that we are all one. The fact that there are those who would like to chop that up and separate us out and it is not much different than the Palestinian conflict. The actual fact about this ruling is the only difference between this ruling and what's going on in Palestine is people are not dying or killing each other or setting off bombs. Now that's a pretty big difference. So let's be clear. That is a big difference. But when it comes to separation of any sort, it is really up to us to be able to look beyond that, to look beyond what we agree or disagree with, to the larger truth that irregardless of where others stand, our lives work because there is only one. And so, of course, somehow even this resolves itself. One of the things that I've noticed about politics throughout the millennia is that the pendulum swings in all directions, and that it doesn't stop at any one place. That what this ruling means for America may not be what we think it means. That as separation shows and rears its ugly head, it is still ours to look beyond it to the real truth in that situation. Cass says respect and honor even when we don't agree, and that's tough. Well, that's very tough if we play in the world and realm of the separation. But if we are willing to look beyond it, to the fact that even this must somehow resolve to a greater good. Because time and time again, the worst situations in history have actually resolved to a greater good. And that's where we in Science of Mind need to hold our attention. If we get caught up in the drama of the separation, then it's tough. But when we are willing to look beyond it and stand for something larger than this, it's not so tough. When we rest and find comfort in the divine that is guiding everything, then it's not as tough. Then it isn't even a blip. Because of course our lives work. And if it means leaving that company, we'll know. Remember, it all still comes down to the same principles we've been talking about week after week. Our full body knowing when our feet are at the fire. And if we don't know yet, then it's not our time to leave yet. But as soon as it is, we'll know. And we'll know where it is we're supposed to be. So we don't have to agree, disagree. We just have to honor the fact that everybody's on their truth. Standing in truth, that is the strength that brings peace no matter what. It's exactly right, Cass. So who wants to weigh in live? All right, Julie.
One thing that came up for me while you were speaking is that sometimes when things come, and I can't think of something specific in my own life, so I'll just kind of just say it. But when something awful or bad, or at least when I give it that name as awful or bad is happening in my life, and then getting caught up in that negativity of it, it's amazing in retrospect how this awful and bad thing was absolutely necessary to bring me to this specific place where I might be presently that's absolutely wonderful and positive. So it's really important for me to remember in the moment, no matter how awful it looks, it is the vehicle of my transformation.
Yes! Not so easy always to get there, but that doesn't change. Yes, 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 Julie. Absolutely. Bang! Who else wants to weigh in around that?
No, that's perfectly said. I mean, like I said, seeing the beauty in the apparent chaos. I mean, I'm really, really entrenched in that right now in my personal life situation. And there's a lot of stuff that you go, oh my gosh, you know, what's the truth of this? What's the lesson in this? What's the, you know, this is pain, this is suffering, this, you know, but honestly, when you surrender to all of that and you stop being so attached and you allow it to reveal itself, the lessons are just remarkable. I mean, I'm taking a class at the Chopra Center called Synchro Destiny, and it's about, you know, releasing all of that control and releasing your attachment. And when you do that, knowing that everything works out perfectly, even though, like Julie said, in the moment it looks horrific or it's so painful, or how did that happen, or why is that happening, when you say, okay, there's a much bigger picture here, and maybe I'm not supposed to see the whole thing because that's my growing edge. You know, and I've been learning that in spades the last few weeks, and Julie couldn't have said it any better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kaz. You know, that's the beauty of these stories. And each week now, we're going to be looking at whatever the top stories for that week are. And because what happens is it does apply back to our personal lives, right? I mean, we've been talking about these stories, and yet we've been talking about our personal lives because it all ties together. We're ensconced in the drama of our lives and applying Science of Mind to the contemporary relevant realities of what it is we're doing. This is what can the practicalness of it that can raise us up and remind us of what it is we truly are. We don't have to deny this stuff going on. We don't have to look away from it. Let's delve into it and rise above it. This is the beauty of what's possible here. So, I love this comment by Jon Stewart. The reason I don't worry about society is 19 people knocked down 2 buildings and killed thousands, but hundreds of people ran into those buildings to save them. I'll take those odds every day. That's the beauty of what's possible when we look for the good. Mr. Rogers, when I was a boy, I would see scary things in the news. My mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I'm always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in the world. In the midst of every conflict, the Red Cross is there. If you don't know what anything else to do, give to the Red Cross. Because in the end, if we are willing to follow Gandhi's adage of what we can do, we will do, and we do it, we will make a difference. On whatever level, we will make a difference.